Hello everyone, welcome back to the online lectures on literary forms. Today we are going to see the consolidation of the entire week. Our topic is literary forms. So in this topic, what are all the subtopics we have seen? I hope you all remember. The first topic we saw was literary poetry. So the topics we have seen in this week are lyric poetry, epic and elegy. Now let's consolidate the points. Let's discuss the important points we have discussed in these 4 lectures. First topic was lyric poetry. Yes, what is a lyric? As we all know, it is one of the Greek originated poetic form. It was an ancient Greek literature. It was taken from ancient Greek literature, which refers to a poem or verse to be sung to the accompaniment of a musical instrument. Okay, in the ancient Greek literature, a poem or a song which is composed, which is sung with the accompaniment of the musical instrument called lyre. That was known as lyrical poem. In the ancient Greek literature, there are 2 types of lyric poetry. One was choral lyrics and the other one is melos. Otherwise, it was known as song. Okay, what is choral lyrics? Chorus. Okay, so poetry or a verse that is chanted by a choir of songs, choir of singers. Okay, group of singers. That was known as choral lyric. The other form was a single poet may sing a song. That is also lyrical poetry. So there was two kinds of lyrical poetry: choral lyrics and melos or a proper song. Okay. And who was the master or the father of this lyrical poetry? The Italian poet Pindar. Let's see who was the father of lyrical poetry. The Greek poet Pindar was the father of lyrical poetry. And why he was so called? Because he perfected the form of lyrical poetry. That's why he was known as the father of lyrical poetry. Now, how this lyrical poetic form developed through the ages. Let's see that. Though it had a Greek origin, it came into the European literature later during the Renaissance period. During Renaissance, the lyric poetry came into Europe and slowly it got entry into English literature. But there was a little modification. Earlier in Greek literature, any poem which was any song which was composed and which was sung with a musical instrument called lyre was known as lyric, right? But here, during the Renaissance, the poets were not just composing the poem to be sung, rather they wrote the poem. They wrote the poem to be read out. Okay, so that was the change. So instead of the poem being musical to listen to, now the readers can read the poem, but of course there was some musical quality because the poets were using the rhythm and all the metrical patterns which would give the musical quality to the poem. So the major difference was earlier the ancient poetry, lyric poem was meant for singing, composed. The poem was composed. But later, during the Renaissance period, it came to be written and read out. Okay, so it meant for visual rather than auditory. So we can read. When it was written with the musical qualities, we can read and enjoy. That was the difference, change that has happened in the lyrical poem. And how the musicality was achieved by the poets? By using meters and some imagery. Okay, and the themes were some mythical stories. Okay, yes. Now let's see what are all the features. It is only a recap. We have already discussed everything in the previous lectures. So we are just going through the notes which you have already seen. Yes, what are the features of a lyric? The first and foremost one is the shortness, brevity. Okay, a lyric poem is a short one. And it would be simple in language and theme. Anybody and everybody can read and understand the lyrical poetry. So it is written in a simple style and using simple language. And subjectivity. Subjectivity is personal elements. The poet is expressing his emotions, feelings. So it is completely personal, subjective. And musicality. Yes, of course, musicality is one of the most important element of lyric poem. And intensity, what is intensity? Intense emotions of the poet, of the speaker, that is being expressed through lyrical poem. Okay, so the intensely felt feelings, maybe a joy or a sorrow, whatever it is, but it is an intensely felt emotions of the poet. And then spontaneity, yes, lyrical poem should come so naturally, so spontaneously, because it is coming from the heart, not from the mind. Okay, so spontaneity, the naturalness, just as Wordsworth defined poetry. What is a poem according to Wordsworth? It is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings collected in tranquility. Okay, so these are all the basic elements or features of a lyric poem. Okay, so a lyric poem expresses the feelings of the poet. And what are all the other major poetic forms which Aristotle has defined? Actually, Aristotle in his Poetics, he has defined 3 kinds of poetry. One was lyrical poetry, and narrative poetry, and dramatic poetry. Okay, narrative poetry was epic, dramatic, drama. Okay. Yes, so it is contrasted with the from the other 2 forms of poetry, narrative and dramatic poetry. How lyrical poetry expresses the pent-up emotions of the poet, whereas narrative poetry, that is epic poetry, it narrates a story in a long verse, long poem. And what is a verse drama or dramatic poetry? It is being enacted on the stage, acted out. The story, here also we will have a story, but the story is acted out on the stage. But the dialogue will be in the verse form, poetic form. Okay, so that is the difference between lyric poetry, dramatic poetry and narrative poetry. Now, what are all the lyrical poems? So, lyric poetry is a broader term. And what are the kinds, what are the types, which other forms of poetry come under lyric poetry? Elegies, odes and sonnets. You see, all these 3 categories, 3 kinds of poems are all expressions of emotions. Yes, elegy you all know, it is the emotion of sorrow, sadness, lamentation. Okay, so it also comes from the heart of a speaker, heart of the poet. And ode is also, we are addressing a person, we are celebrating something, that is ode. Okay, and sonnet is also a kind of emotional poem on a particular subject. Okay, so all these kinds of poems all expressing the personal feelings, and it all have musical qualities, so they all come under lyric poem. Okay, now let's see what are all the when the lyric poem was very much popular. It originated in the ancient Greek literature, and later through Renaissance it came to Europe and England, and latest stages during neoclassical age and all, lyric poem lost its popularity because lyric poem is something personal, but the neoclassical writers, they did against this personal elements in poem, right? They were all objective. So during the 18th century and all, lyric poem lost its popularity. But once again in the 19th century, during the Romantic age, lyric poem got back its popularity. Okay, so lyric poetry was popular during the 19th century through the poets, through the Romantic poets like Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, and of course the Victorian poet Tennyson. So they were all very important contributors to the development of lyric poem. Okay, and intensely subjective and personal expressions. Yes, during Romantic age, the lyric poem became all the more subjective, highly personal, and all the more intense emotions were expressed in the lyric poems. And what all the attributes they gave to lyric poetry? Brevity, that again shortness, and metrical coherence, that is rhyming scheme, rhythmic pattern, and subjectivity, that is the personal elements, and passion, the felt emotions. Okay, so these were all the attributes of lyric poem during the Romantic age. Now we'll move on to the next type of poetry, that is epic. Yes, what is an epic? Epic, as we all know, it is a long narrative poem detailing the amazing achievements and extraordinary heroes. It is a long narrative poem about a dignified subject and written in a dignified style. Okay? It may be a heroic, a legendary hero or a war hero. Okay? So these will be the main characters in an epic. Superhuman deeds and adventures, that would be the theme, subject of an epic poem, and the language will be highly stylized, okay, stylish language, and here we'll have a kind of blending of lyrical, that is musical quality, and also personal feelings and emotions, and dramatic tradition. Dramatic tradition in the sense, the descriptions will be so dramatic. It is in poetic form, narration only, but even the narration will be so descriptive, and the readers can visualize as if we see some drama. Okay, so all these features will be there in an epic poem. Say for example, Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, and Milton's Paradise Lost. So when Milton describes the pandemonium or Satan or the serpent entering in the Garden of Eden, we can visualize everything. So that is the dramatic quality in the epic poem. Okay. And what are all the examples for the epic poetry? The most ancient epic poem was Gilgamesh. Okay, it was taken from Sumerian literature, Sumeria, and that dated back to 3000 BC. Okay. And next ancient was Mahabharata. It dated back to 300 years. There is an Indian epic, and then the Greek epic, Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, and Roman Aeneid, Virgil's Aeneid. These are all the ancient epic poems. And in English literature, we have Milton's Paradise Lost, Faerie Queene, Spenser's Faerie Queene, and Dante's the Divine Comedy. Okay, these are all the few examples of epic poetry. Now, what's the difference between a lyric poem and an epic poem? So, lyric poems were originally designed to be recited, to be sung, okay, with a musical instrument called lyre. Whereas epic poems were concerned with telling stories. Yes, lyric poem is about emotions of the poet, whereas epic poem is narrating a story, okay, telling a story. And here, in lyric poem, the emphasis is on the personal feelings, okay, the poet's emotions, whereas here in epic poetry, the emphasis is not on an individual person, but on whole mankind, humanity. Say for example, if you take Milton's Paradise Lost, what is the theme? The theme was the fall of man, how Adam and Eve disobeyed God's commands and they fell from their high status in the Garden of Eden, how they were doomed to the earth. Okay, so this is all about the whole humanity, not about a single person. Okay, so that's the difference. And the lyric poem deals with the specific, concrete, okay, particular emotion, particular person, whereas the epic poem deals with the universal. Okay, so it talks about the cosmos, the entire world, the entire humanity, and general ideas and general situations, not any specific incident that happen in an individual's life. Okay, so these are all the difference between a lyric poem and an epic poem. Now let's move on to the next category of poetry, lyrical poetry, that is elegy. Yes, what is an elegy? Elegy is a mourning song. It is a song of lamentation. When an elegiac poem is written at the death of somebody. Okay, so it is a song, it is a poem written to express the sorrow over someone's death. It is a pensive, sometimes it may be a pensive or reflective poem, some serious poem where the poet is collecting his nostalgic past memories or some melancholic emotions. Okay, that is an elegy. Basically, it is a lamentation, poem of lamentation. Okay, and it is, yes, what is the purpose? Actually, first, the purpose of an elegy is to mourn the death of a person. Okay, so expressing sorrow over the loss of somebody. And in the second part, we'll have the poet will be praising the dead person, what are all the good qualities he had. Okay, so that will be spoken about, that will be sung about. And finally, there will be a consolation. Yes, this is the course of life. Everybody has to die. Anyhow, his fame will live forever. Just like that, the poet is consoling himself. Okay, so these are the course of the elegiac poem. So first, there will be a sense of loss, lamentation, and then there will be a praise of the dead person, and finally, there will be a consolation. Okay, what is the origin of elegy? As in all other lyrical poem, elegy is also of Greek origin, and the word came from the Greek word elegia, which means a song. Okay, and it meant to lament or to be sorrowful. That is the meaning. And here, elegy, in the ancient times, elegy was a poem which was written in an elegy couplet. Okay, a particular couplet was used, and whatever poem written with that elegiac couplet was known as elegy. But later, there was a transition in the meaning, that is, any poem which expresses the sorrowful mood on the death of somebody. That was meant by elegy. This is a later evolution. Yes. So initially it was written, any verse written in elegiac couplet. What is that elegiac couplet? The irregular hexameter and pentameter. Okay. So if any poem is written using the irregular hexameter and pentameter, that was considered as an elegy in the ancient times. Now, some people will be confusing between the words eulogy and elegy. Okay. Now let's make it clear. A eulogy is a tribute spoken at a funeral. Okay. Why? To praise the life of somebody who has recently died. Okay. So it's a funeral oration. I've already told you the example of Antony's and Brutus' speech during Julius Caesar's death. Okay. So it is a eulogy, praising the dead person. It is at the time of funeral. But elegy is, it is a mourning song written not immediately, not at the funeral, but after the death of somebody, recollecting his memories, we are expressing, the poet is expressing the emotions, like the feeling of loss, sorrow. Okay, so that's the difference between eulogy and elegy. Now, what are all the characteristics of an elegy? Yes, of course, as I said, the elegy begins with a lamentation over the loss of life, and then there will be a praise of the lost person, and finally there will be consolation. And what are all the attributes? What are the key qualities? Simplicity, brevity, and sincerity. Yes, this is the attributes of the whole lyrical poem. So it is also sharing, elegy is also sharing the attributes with lyric, right? Now we have come to the concluding part. Now let's check your memory power. Okay, so for 4 weeks we have discussed the topics lyric, epic and elegy, right? And now we have seen the consolidation of the points, key points. Now let me ask some questions. Okay, of course, don't worry, I'll give you options. Now, an elegy, sir. What is an elegy? Is it a sad poem, usually about someone's death, or is it a love poem, or is it a prayer, or is it a poem about someone's marriage? I think it's a very simple question. Everybody can answer. Is you right? The answer is okay. You guess the answer. Let's discuss the answer at the end. Okay. And the second question: which type of poetry expresses the thoughts and feelings of the poet? Just now we discussed. Yes. Here also, please note down your answers, and finally we'll check it out. And third question: an elegy is a poem written on which occasion? To celebrate an occasion, in the praise of God, or to give expression to a love for someone, or in the memory of someone who has died. Just now we discussed. So you can all very well answer correctly, and I hope everybody has guessed the correct answer. Now move on to the fourth question. In ancient times, lyric poems were created to be this. You have to think and answer. Okay, in the ancient times, lyric poems were created to be whether read out or sung or explained or imagined. Okay. Yes. Shall I reveal the answers? Yes. So, in ancient times, lyric poems were created to be sung, composed with the accompaniment of lyre, right? So, the second answer. And for the third question, shall I open up the answer? Yes, an elegy is a poem written in the memory of someone who has died. Okay. And fifth one, a lament for the dead is a feature of a lamentation. Yes, the previous question was also based on that, right? Elegy. Okay. And what does the lyric poem express? Lyric poem expresses is it the gloomy times and bad feelings, or hot times and hurt feelings, happy times and exciting feelings, or the personal thoughts and feelings? Yes, of course, this is right. A lyric poem expresses the personal thoughts and feelings of the poet. Now, an elegy usually gives expression to a joy, loss, victory or defeat. So, on the death of somebody, so it is a loss, right? So, elegy is a poem which expresses the sense of loss. And the eighth one, the poetic form which is concerned with the feelings and emotions of the poet is, yes, just now we discussed lyric. So, however the question is twisted, you should be able to answer correctly. Ode to the West Wind is a lyric poetry of, I think you can very well guess, some people may get confused between Keats and Shelley. Yes, is it by Keats or Shelley? Because these were the two romantic writers who wrote many odes. Many odes were written by John Keats, but this one was written by Shelley. It is a revolutionary poem. Okay, Ode to the Wild West Wind. Ode to the West Wind was written by Shelley. Okay, the last question. A continuous, long comparison of two unlike things which can be as long as a paragraph, sometimes longer, even longer, is called, what is that? A continuous long comparison between two dissimilar things. Yes, we all know comparison is simile. So, it's a long comparison, epic simile. Yes, it's a long comparison which is one of the most important feature in an epic poem. We have seen in Paradise Lost, in Homer's Iliad, how the soldiers moving towards Troy were compared to the swarm of bees, and here Satan was compared to the Leviathan. Okay, yes, we already discussed. I hope you all remember that. Okay, very good. You all answered well. Thank you all. We'll meet again in the next lecture on the other topic. Okay, thank you all. Yes, you can have a look at the answers. You can even note down. We all answered all the questions correctly. Thank you.